So welcome back to my Road to Marvel's Black Widow series. This week we're on week 8, which means we're talking about Thor the Dark World, or as I call it, Thor the Dark Thor. Now, if you're new to this series, every week I've been reviewing the next installment in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Last week I did Iron Man 3, next week I'll be doing Winter Soldier, and so on and so forth, up until the release of Black Widow. So if you want to be along with me for this journey, make sure to click that subscribe button so you can come around every single weekend, and you can also see the previous stuff I've done in this installment. But anyways, with all that said, let's actually talk about Thor the Dark Thor. So to start things off the exact same way we've done every other week in this series, we're going to start off talking about the new cast being introduced, and the only one I actually that was a real noticeable kind of addition was Christopher Eccleston playing Malekith. I think the guy's name was, a Dark Elf. He was famous for playing Doctor Who, even though he played for one season. This guy is the most famous for playing Doctor Who, and I'm a massive fan of Doctor Who. I didn't actually meet him, but I've met other doctors, and I do want to meet him, but he's a very expensive person to meet. But even though I've loved Doctor Who for years, I only found out he was playing this character about a year or two ago, because he's unrecognizable in the role. You think having the Doctor actually being in there, because Doctor Who is so famous, you think by having him as the villain in your movie, you kind of want to market it a bit more than what it is, but you can't barely tell Tim. Every now and again, knowing that Tim, you can hear Tim in a bit of dialogue, but other than that, you don't recognize him at all. And the character of Malekith in this movie is so forgettable. You forget everything about him. Even right now, I'm actually questioning if that's actually his name or not, because I'm not really sure if that's his name. You know his motive, but even as it, I actually only watched this movie last night, and I'm kind of struggling to remember his motive. He doesn't look very distinct. Like, at one point during the movie, Thor kind of lightning bolt and sets half his face on fire. I'm assuming, and I'm probably right in saying this, the only reason they did that was so you can tell which one he is, because they all look so alike. There's no difference to them whatsoever. So I am pretty confident in saying the only reason they burnt half of his face was so the fact that you know which one he is. But as well, they got Christopher Eccleston in there. The returning cast in this is, they're so much better in this movie than they were in the first. That's not saying they were bad in the first, but they're just so much better in this movie because they got used to the roles. Of course, Chris Hemsworth playing Thor again. He gets a lot more comedic in the later movies, and the complaint people had is that he was never like this. But watching in this movie, he's a lot more physical comedy, and it's more funnier in stuff he does. Like, there's two scenes in particular is when he gets on the train and then the girl kind of falls into him. And he gives a little grin as she places her hand in his chest, and then when he goes into Jane's apartment and he looks at the coat rack and he hangs up Milner. All that is just great physical comedy that Chris Hemsworth was able to do within this movie. You also have Tom Hiddleston playing Loki, who everyone knows Tom Hiddleston is great as Loki, but he's so much better in this movie than he was in the first Thor movie. He's even a lot more better than he was in the first Avengers. He's very confident in what he does. Just the character Loki is just so much more confident. He's so funny in this movie. Like the scene when he's talking to Thor and his room's all clean. All of a sudden, okay, he was tricking Thor, and the room has just been ransacked and everything. All of this works really well for the character of Loki, and I just think he is by far the best he has been so far in this universe where I am at this point. He gets better, but so far this is the best he has been, was in Thor the Dark World. And then also you got Anthony Hopkins playing Odin, and you get a lot more of him in this movie, and which is good because I'm a fan of Anthony Hopkins. I think he's really good in the role as Odin. As well, Renee Russo playing Thor's mom Frigga, I'm pretty sure her name was. She gets so much more to do. She really is an actual character in this movie. Before in the other one, she was just Thor's mother, but in this movie, she's an actual character, which kind of makes her death feel a little bit more. Now, bear in mind, her death, I'm disappointed and still sad, but the fact that, oh yeah, that's Thor's mom who died, Thor's gonna be upset by that. I'm not sad because of the character died, because I didn't really give a shit about the character, because they don't give you enough to actually feel for the character, but you still do feel something just because it is Thor's mother who has died. And then finally, of course, you do have Jane Foster played by Natalie Portman, and I said in my previous one I've never been a fan of Jane. I didn't like Jane in the first movie. I really don't like Jane in this movie. She's not funny, and they overuse her way too much. I'm really glad she didn't come back for the third one, and as I said, I'm really disappointed she's actually coming back for the fourth movie. Unless they kind of do a big drastic change of her character, I'm not really interested in seeing more of her, because of, well, mostly this movie. I think she's really bad in this movie. Not the actual performance, just the character of Jane Foster. I'm just really not a fan of that character whatsoever. She just, honestly, just does not work for me at all. One of the biggest problems with this movie is the tone. The movie does not know what it is. It starts off with this big, massive, very much feeling like Lord of the Rings, which is pretty cool. I'm seeing Fellowship of the Ring later on today in cinemas, which is pretty cool. But the movie, it starts off feeling very much like Lord of the Rings, which I really like. I really like Thor's introduction when he lands in this world where there's a battle and he comes against this big rock monster and he just hits him with the hammer once and the rock monster is destroyed. All that works really well setting up the movie, and we kind of go about going back to Asgard, and it's very Lord of the Rings esque, very fantasy esque, very all this is bigger than life kind of stuff. And then we jump back down to Earth, where I don't really think we needed to go. But then we see Jane Foster on a date with Chris O'Dowd, which I love the IT crowd. Chris O'Dowd I think is hilarious. He is Irish, so that's another good thing. But she's on a date with him, and it just really doesn't work. And then Kat Dennings runs in, and Kat Dennings is the worst in this movie. As I said in my other review, wasn't a fan of her in the first movie, but in this movie she is god awful. She is so bad in this movie. The character is extremely irritating. Every time she showed up on screen, I was like, oh crap. Every time she spoke, I was like, oh crap, because she's just not a funny character. The character thinks she's hilarious, and it really, really doesn't work for me. As well, the tone, like that big jump, big fancy, then going down to a date, and then kind of continues on in Earth, and then it goes back, and then we have a buddy comedy with Thor and Loki, which I really, really like. I think that's probably the best part of the movie. But the fact that it's jumping all over the place, all this different tones, is really the massive problem with this movie, and that comes down to the script. The script in this movie, even though it's got good scenes, the story itself is very, very boring. This movie, it's so boring. Honest to God, like I only watched this last night, and I think this movie is just under 2 hours, if I remember correctly. It's like 150, and took me about 3.5 hours. I kind of got up, made my dinner, I had a shower, came back to it, then I kind of did other stuff because this movie, I just couldn't sit through it. Honestly, I was so surprised that I actually couldn't sit through this movie, because from memory I was always like, oh yeah, Thor, The Dark World, it's not the best movie, but it is okay. But on this rewatch, I really didn't like it. I thought it was extremely boring, extremely dull. There was no the movie had no personality. Like, you see the Iron Man, you see the Captain America movies, you understand what that movie is, but this movie, I have no idea what it was. It just, of course I know the story, but just the movie itself, I just feel like it really didn't know what it wanted to be. Having the Eater being trapped inside Jane Foster feels very much like a forced idea of having her being in the movie. It feels like they needed her and really wanted her to be in the movie, but couldn't think of an actual way of getting her into the movie that would make a lot of sense, rather than Thor just going down and hanging out. Because he didn't do that in the Avengers, I said it's kind of weird if he does it now, so I feel like they put the Eater inside her just to give him an excuse to go down. Because other than that, I don't see any point in these people being inside the movie, because they really do drag it down a good bit. The final action sequence is okay. Actually, no, you know what? It's not. It's a bad action sequence. The majority of the action sequence, for a ridiculous idea, doesn't even follow Thor. Thor is fighting Malekith, but while he's doing it, we're jumping back and forth. We're seeing Jane being able to teleport some other Dark Elves, or we see Darcy or Kat Dennings kissing her in turn. That's what the majority of the third act is actually following, rather than seeing a big, awesome action sequence with Thor fighting Malekith. We spend a good portion of it actually having Kat Dennings kissing her boyfriend, or Jane doing teleporting. And just like with the end of Iron Man 3, where we got to see Pepper Potts kill the villain, we get to see Jane Foster be the one killing the villain in this movie. Which, actually no, sorry, it wasn't Jane Foster, it was Eric Selvig having him kill the villain, which it was kind of weird. And the whole Eric Selvig, his role in this movie, it's a lot of fun. He's a really weird character, especially coming off what happened to him in the Avengers. I think it works really well for his character, and I really like him within this movie. But I just think it's a weird idea that he's the one who killed the big bad. Like, Thor is literally passed out, and this guy is the one who evidently kind of saves everything, because he's the one who actually killed Malekith by letting the ship drop on him. I just kind of think it's a bit of a weird choice to have him be the one to kill the big bad. And one of the big problems with our big bad Malekith is the fact that he doesn't really do anything. Going into it, I was thinking, oh yeah, he kills Thor's mom, but then rewatching it, he in a way kills her. He gives the order to kill her, but he doesn't really kill her, and he doesn't really do much throughout the movie. So that's kind of one of the reasons why he's so unmemorable. He doesn't really do anything. He has played by a somewhat of a great actor. I think Christopher Eccleston's an okay actor, but he just doesn't really do anything in this movie that makes him stand out. He's by far the most forgettable villain, and in my review for Thor, I remember saying that I thought the Frost Giants were so forgettable. The Dark Elves are just, if not more, forgettable. These people are just so forgettable. They're so boring. They're so generic. Literally, at least the Frost Giants looked interesting. These Dark Elves just look so dull and not interesting whatsoever. But one of the great things about this movie is weird. It starts off about maybe towards the end of the second act, and it continues on for not that much longer, but is pairing Thor and Loki up together. It's like they work so well in this movie. Of course, we got to see them in the other two, but in this movie, their back and forth is really good. They've got such great chemistry, and it works really well on the screen together. And they have that scene when they're walking to make their way to Jane, and we get that quick Captain America cameo, which is just hilarious. I love how much. Of course, it is Chris Evans, but having Loki or Chris Evans be Loki, being Captain America, works really well. He's so obnoxious, and I love that cameo. I just think it is absolutely hilarious, and the back and forth with him works really well. Of course, as I've said, we get that sequence when Loki was actually tricking Malekith, and we see Thor's hand getting chopped off. I remember the first time I seen that, I was just shocked. I was like, oh my god, did he actually just chopped off Thor's hand, giving Thor over to Malekith and all that. It works well the first time. Upon rewatch, kind of with most movies, it's okay. It wasn't, I kind of knew what was happening, so the whole playing up, I was like, okay, yeah, come on Loki, just get to the point. And that could just be a fact that I was kind of bored with the movie. I wanted it to be over, so that's probably not, that's actually not even a negative with the movie. That was just me and my patience being gone with the movie, because I was just so done with it at that point. We also have Loki's second fake out death in this movie, which it works a lot better in the first movie, because in the first movie you think, okay, well obviously he's going to come back, he's the villain in the next movie, but this movie we didn't know where it's going to go. We actually thought, oh crap, they actually killed off Loki. It's a great death scene. You see him, Thor is just in bits holding him there, and Loki's just losing his, like he's actually dying there. It works really, really well. But then you get the final reveal at the end that even right now, even I knew it, it was just fantastic. I love that reveal at the end when Loki has actually taken over Asgard and that he is Odin. You can see as he's talking to him, when Thor actually says, you know, I'll take my hammer back, and Loki's like, no, you hang on to it, because he knows if he actually takes it, Thor will know that that's not Odin, because of course Odin can lift it, Loki can't lift it. So that kind of sequence at the end works really, really well. But then just the whole build up, like, okay, what's going to happen in Thor 3, because Odin's gone, Loki is now running Asgard, all of that sets up the sequel fantastically well. So that's kind of, the movie ends on a high note with that, even though I said the action sequence at the end is pretty bad. But that sequence at the end with Loki and Thor just works really well to finish up this movie. We also got the post-credit scene of two of our Warriors 3. I can't remember. It was the big guy and I can't remember who else. But he goes to see the Collector, and they go to give the Eater, and we let them know that that is an Infinity Stone, that the Tesseract is on Asgard. They don't want to keep two there, so they give one to Collector. The Collector's like, one down, 5 more to go, setting up that he's either going to be giving them to Thanos, or that he's going to collect them himself. Now, that doesn't really go anywhere, but that was a nice little post-credit scene, which is probably still one of the best post-credit scenes, because that just sets up so much excitement moving forward. So Thor the Dark Thor is a bad movie, honestly. So far, this is the only bad MCU movie. We've had kind of duds like Iron Man 2 and Thor, where they are kind of not good movies, but this is the first bad movie I've come across. I really did not enjoy my time watching this, and this was my first rewatch. I rewatched this before Endgame, and I remember watching it before Endgame and I thought it was fine, but this time it just really didn't work for me, and I'm not really looking forward to watching this movie again at some point in the future. But if you are a fan of Thor the Dark World, let me know your thoughts on the movie in the comment section down below. Let me know the positives you have to this, and maybe you might bring me over to the other side a little bit more. But if you want to see more videos just like this one, click that subscribe button so you can come back next week when I do a review of Captain America the Winter Soldier, which I'm really excited to rewatch that movie, because it's been a while since I've seen that movie. So if you want to hear my thoughts on that, again, click that subscribe button so you can come back next week. And as always, thanks for watching.